Our next item is C2, Just For You Caregivers. Please come forward.
Thank you.
Please be seated.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Njija, please introduce the issues in this case.
Madam Chair and members, the appeal before you presents one unresolved issue, which is whether any adjustments to the amount of unreported taxable sales are warranted.
Okay. Thank you. To the petitioner, welcome to the Board of Equalization. You have 10 minutes to make your initial presentation and then an additional 5 minutes on rebuttal. Please introduce yourself for the record, and then you may present your case.
Thank you, and thank you for having us today. My name is Jeff Kane. I'm the accountant, and I help prepare the taxes for Just For You Caregivers.
Okay.
And I'm George LaGrace.
George
LaGrace,
LaGrace.
the owner of Just For You
Okay,
Caregivers.
okay, great. Thank you very much.
First off, I'd like to just start off to talk about the structure and how the business is actually set up for Just For You Caregivers. When California laws came out for medical marijuana, they were supposed to be a collective, a nonprofit co-op in a sense. George is one of very few people that actually set up his business in that way. His original articles were as a nonprofit. The IRS then denied the nonprofit status because of the business that he is in. So he therefore had to become a for-profit business. But originally set up, he's a collective co-op, which in terms in any farming business or industries out there, a collective nonprofit co-op, it's members pulling resources together to grow and produce a product or good for the common good of the group. So that's what's happened in this case, is there's about 10 to 15 members every 3 to 4 months that are chipping in money to buy resources, pay electricity, buy supplies to grow the medical marijuana and have medicine for the 10 to 15 members that are contributing at the time. They are not a delivery service or a storefront, and that's this whole audit, that's what's happening. They're being profiled and grouped into a delivery storefront category of everyone else. We provided all contribution logs for the audit, which are, you guys are considering the sales logs, but those are the contribution logs as far as money has been received. All of those sales logs that we've turned in and produced to you guys do match the BOE returns that were filed and the IRS tax returns that have been filed for the corporation as well. I believe the observation method was used during the audit period. They grouped us into other delivery services and storefronts, which again is not the correct grouping. They used an observation method in auditing these other storefronts and delivery services that doesn't really apply to Georgia's situation here or Just For You Caregivers. The audit kept bringing up the weed maps, and which is, that I'm learning is a site that gives all the different storefronts, delivery services, anyone in the medical marijuana industry is showing up on this website. They kept going through different reviews. There was 267 reviews that were posted on weed maps during the audit period. There's only 185 actually unique views on that site. We don't agree with the weed maps things, but even if we went through it and took those 185 reviews, times it by $100 per sale or contribution per person, that comes up to $18,500 in total sales over the audit period. We claimed a little over $30,000 during the audit period. So those numbers there don't really match up. There are some, on the weed maps, there's some reviews that were questioned about Ryan as a delivery person. Ryan was actually a member of Just For You Caregivers. He's actually George's son-in-law as well. And at times, a few years back, once the medicine was produced, he occasionally would drop off some of the medicine to one of the patients that wasn't able to drive and pick it up. A lot of the patients there's actually been 5 different patients that's passed away in the last few years from cancer and other medical conditions. So these are true medical patients that are involved with it. The client list that we provided, I know there was a little bit misunderstanding at the beginning. It lists out the members 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down to about 15 members at different periods. Those members aren't the same members every quarter. We use that as member 1 could be a different member for member 1 could be a different member each quarter. Depending on the people's needs for the medicine, they might not need to contribute or chip in for the next grow that's happening. So it's not like there was only 10 or 15 members per year, but it's 10 or 15 different members per quarter at different times. So throughout a 1-year period, there could be 40 to 60 different members. I know there was also some concern about photos on weed maps. Weed maps, if you want to stay on their site, requires that there's some updates being made to it. So there are updates of different medical marijuana that is available and that's produced. They're not all available at one time. They're just different strands that have been grown by Just For You Caregivers over the time and the period that they've been in business. Weed Maps also requires that you update the menu on there too. So to stay on the site and try to produce new members for the co-op, George would update the menu. These products are not available for immediate delivery, or neither of all the products are available at one time. There's 2 to 3 different strands that are grown every 3 months during the cycle, and those are the 2 or 3 strands that would be available at the time. So he'd post those strands up, but keep the other strands that had been going there. The reviews that are on Weed Maps, one, it's hearsay. There's no proof of it. And the other is, if it's a medical marijuana site and people are leaving reviews, most of those people who are leaving reviews are probably under the influence of the medicine that they're taking, which I couldn't see that review would even hold up to this case. I use similar websites. I don't know if some of you guys do. Yelp is these things. I've looked up restaurants, gone out to dinner before, go to review a restaurant after a couple drinks. I could be reviewing the wrong restaurant. So it's just kind of a whole joke to me that reviews from a medical marijuana site that people are under the influence are being taken as the only hard evidence that they have. Bottom line is the nonprofit or corporation that has been put into, their profit for the last 3 or 4 years has been less than $300 per year. Currently, they don't have more than $1,200 of funds available. So anything over a $1,200 fine, penalties, additional tax that would want to be collected from the BOE would devastate this co-op and basically put them out of business and force them to dissolve the whole corporation altogether. George does have other income. His fiancée works as well. George files his own tax returns with other income, and this was just something he set up to try to help people in need, and it's all just someone trying to do the right thing and now being penalized for it and grouped into a realm that he shouldn't be grouped into with other delivery and storefronts.
Okay, the department, please introduce yourself for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Good morning, Chairwoman Ma, and members. My name is Scott Lambert, and I'll be representing the Business Tax and Fee Department today. To my right is Kevin Hanks, also with the Business Tax and Fee Department, and to Mr. Hanks' right is Stephen Smith with the Legal Department. In this particular case, the taxpayer operates a mobile marijuana dispensary. The taxpayer, over the 3-year period, reported approximately $32,000 in taxable measure. Those figures are supported by contribution logs, and as the representative stated, They appear to be contributions to the cooperative instead of sales. It appears that none of the marijuana sales were reported during this time period, although $32,000 in taxable measure was reported. Under Proposition 215, you're either a collective or a cooperative. The taxpayer chose in this particular case to be a cooperative. Generally, under this, in order to be a patient, you have to sign or become a member. On the website, taxpayer's website, they do have a form that's filled out before you can buy. You have to become a member of the cooperative. There were a number of reviews on the Weed Maps website. There was approximately 325 reviews. There was, after you go through them, there were some that were from duplicate customers. It comes out a little over 180 customers during this time period. There were also 51,000 hits to the website during the audit period. The reviews were made by the taxpayers' customers that appear. They refer to, I'll call them employees. Under the 215, they're supposed to be volunteers, but it's people that made the deliveries. In a number of cases, the taxpayer would respond to those reviews. Upon audit, there were no records that were provided other than the contribution logs. There are no sales records. There are no bank accounts. The taxpayer does not have a storefront. Therefore, an observation test was not done. What the department decided to do was to use another mobile delivery business in that particular area that had been audited, and we used the average taxable measure for that audit period, and it came out to $72,000. And how that audit was established was from purchases of vials. It was not from an observation test. The taxpayer also on Weed Maps had a price list of the marijuana, and they also had to pay to be on the Weed Maps website. The number of hours that the taxpayer was operating based on the Weed Maps was 81 hours a week. The number of hours that were used for the comparable business was slightly less than that. There is a survey that was done in Marijuana Business Daily that shows for California the average purchase that a customer makes is $70 a transaction. My understanding is for the mobile delivery system that the average is slightly higher in that case, but that was not used to establish the liability. I merely refer to that as if you use the $70 per transaction as an average transaction, that the amount that the department came up with would average out to less than one sale an hour. So the amount that was arrived at by the department appears to be reasonable. With that, the department concurs with the Appeals Division decision and recommendation.
Okay. Taxpayers, 5 minutes on rebuttal.
Yeah, keep going back to there's no sales logs that were actually produced. The sales logs are the contribution logs. They're the same thing that we keep talking about. In a nonprofit co-op, people are contributing every 3 months to grow. So as they're contributing money, we kept a log. George doesn't feel, or Just For You doesn't feel like even sales tax should be paid on contributions, but we did the right thing by reporting them and paying the sales tax anyway. But there are no sales logs or sales receipts because there were no sales. All of medical marijuana is grown by the members and pulled from money from the resources. So those logs are technically the sales logs that we're talking, they were produced to the board. And those are the same logs that match the IRS federal returns and the BOE returns that were filed. We go back, he's mentioned 180 clients again, or customers, at $70 average customers. So again, if we take the 180, if you guys want to keep going to weed maps, let's even take it at $100 per client that bought. That would have been $18,000 in sales. We reported $32,000 in sales over the 3 months. Deliveries, it's not a delivery. Only delivery would be dropping off medicine to the members that are unable to come pick it up themselves. Weed maps, they actually do require the price list, the hours to be on the site, everything like that if you want to stay on the site. So yes, there's price lists and hours, phones answered during those times, but there's not deliveries that are available during those times. It's a way for them to call in, George to explain how the co-op works, and if they want to become a member and start contributing towards the next grow, then they have that opportunity. But there's not medicine to take to them immediately. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe I'll start. Whose phone number, 951-746-8046? Is that your phone number?
Yes, ma'am.
And then how about jfyc.ca@gmail.com? Is that your?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So those are the numbers that are listed on Weed Maps as the contact information. And I have to say, you get very good reviews. Okay. So I'm.
But they're high.
I've been doing this for 18 months, right? Studying this whole industry, trying to figure out how to bank the industry. So I kind of know a little bit about how your industry works. And unfortunately, being a cash business, there's no real audit trail for us. There's no bank statements. There's no credit card statements. There's no, basic third-party transactions. So unfortunately, when our department goes out, they have to try to figure out the best possible way to audit. If you don't have a storefront, they're not sitting in front, they're using a comparable delivery service, and it does say you guys do deliver. So that's how they use it, and without having any real substantiation except what the taxpayer provides, it's very, very hard for us to, we're sympathetic and we try to see what is reasonable, but given that there's no real paperwork, how would you propose that this methodology is not correct? So, you're on Weed Maps, you do deliver. If it's not correct, then maybe you need to change Weed Maps, but people have consistently said that they're calling, getting delivery service, and that they're happy, satisfied customers for the most part. So how would you tell us that, that our methodology is not correct? So, if you're making a retail sales, that's what Prop 215 does. That's what, people who are trying to comply, they are collecting and remitting sales tax on their sales to customers, regardless if they're part of a cooperative or a member or not. I mean, that's just what's happening in the industry. So I'd like to hear how you are different than the other delivery services out there that are perhaps set up in the same model with members or not.
Well, again, Weed Maps requires certain things, so it's either storefront or delivery. There's not a button on there for co-ops or collectives like that. So in the members, George does take the medicine to the members. Occasionally they can't pick it up. But he's not a delivery service, he's not a storefront, it's different. We reported the sales, being a cash business. Yes, he's kept his logs, he's documented them. That's what we use year after year as filing the tax returns and everything else. So I understand your guys' side, but on our side too, what else do you guys want us to give us? What else do you want to produce? We've produced our records that we have. records of the purchases of the different products and supplies too. So records are available and we've produced them. They're just, I don't know what else you want us to give or to give to you guys. I
Okay, so
mean, I don't.
Maybe to the department, what kind of records have been produced?
Well, the contribution report and tax returns for 2 years. That's it. The records that were not produced are sales journals, membership agreements, sales invoices, purchase journals, purchase invoices, expense reports and related documentation, bank statements, which I understand they generally would not have. So we understand because this is legal in the state of California, it is not legal in the United States federally. So that leads to some problems, and I'm not an expert in this industry. I did go to a couple days training in Oaksterdam just recently, and did receive quite a bit of useful information during that understanding of what's going on, and the understanding of Prop 215 and what that did, and they're also going to track and trace in 2018, in which the marijuana or I guess cannabis in California will be tracked from when it's grown until when it's sold. And there's also Proposition 64, which is on the November calendar, which is going to lead to some issues with that as well, and the possible exemption of medical marijuana and the taxing of retail cannabis. But the problem in this particular case is, if you look at weed maps, you see a lot of activity on there, and there's, the taxpayer can say, I wasn't making deliveries, but it consistently refers to the deliveries on there, and it refers to, we close at 9 o'clock. If you want it by 9 o'clock, you got to get to us, in enough time that we're able to deliver it to you. And like I said, there was 51,000 hits on the website, and that's not to say there was 51,000 customers, because I'm sure there was a correlation between hits and the sales that are being made. But at the same time, when you look at the reviews, you can't look at one review and say that's one sale. You could have a person that makes a review and they make repeated purchases. So I think when it's all said and done, really the department had no alternative other than the method that was used to establish the liability in this case.
Okay, Ms. Stowers.
To the department, I understand that you used the results from a prior audit, and I got from your testimony that you used their purchase records to get to that 72,000, their vials.
Yes.
Okay. Did that particular taxpayer agree to the?
They did not agree. They did not agree with that, and they're in the settlement process right now, and I'm not sure, we're not privy to that information in settlement, so.
Right, so we want to talk about settlement.
And what we tried, right, well, we don't know what's, because they're separate from us, and we're not allowed to know what they're doing. But the vials were used as a method. So what we found is we found a box in this particular case for the taxpayer that we used as an example. We found a box, and we were able to obtain the number of vials. And in this particular case, that's how that taxpayer was delivering their product, was in vials. In this particular case, the taxpayer doesn't use vials, they use baggies, and they obtain those apparently from grocery stores or other retail outlets. We're not able to establish a method of establishing the tax from in that method. So the vials was the only way that we could use to establish it in the audit of the example.
In the example audit, was it for the same period, and were they in the same general location or county?
It was in the same general area, and the audit period. Let's look here. Yeah, it was almost exactly the same, except in this particular case, it was 6 months longer for this taxpayer than the other was. Otherwise, the two periods overlap.
Okay, then my final question, I think my notes have here that the way the department did it, you came up with 20 sales a day and $800 in revenue per day?
Well,
The way to verify if it was reasonable?
that's what appeals did.
That's what appeals did.
And I would say that, based on what I've looked at in the business, marijuana business daily, is they have California retails, or I'm sorry, California marijuana sales, average transaction is $70 a transaction, and generally, my understanding is that the delivery services have a little bit higher, just from the fact that those people are generally unable to come to a storefront. But there are, you could have areas where some places don't allow storefronts, and so you have to have delivery services in those areas. So it really depends on where you're located, and in some areas they don't allow it at all. You can't sell in that area. There's not a storefront. So it really depends on the different areas where it is, but in this case, the example we used and the taxpayer are both located in the same area.
To the petitioner, I just want to say, I understand, well, I kind of follow what Ms. Muller is saying, that it's difficult to have records in your industry, but we do need to have books and records. The method that the department used, I thought it was a little unusual, but he's testifying that when they use vials, I understand you guys don't have the vials, I'm assuming those are little bottles. But I find their method to be reasonable, considering that they have nothing else to look at, and it is a taxable transaction. Those are my comments.
Mr. Horton.
To the petitioner, do you keep track of all your members?
Yes.
You have membership agreements.
Yes.
Did you provide that to the department?
No, because it's confidential information. It's medical records, and we can't give up people's names to them. We've had them, but as far as confidentiality goes, we thought that would be an issue.
You can always,
Redact their last name?
redact the medical information as to what their medical condition is. I mean, by virtue that they are a member, the presumption is that they want the product and they want to consume the product. I think it's, inherently, I think we as an organization may want to consider explaining to the industry. I know Member Ma has done an exceptional job, Runner and Harkey as well, and we all seek to educate the industry about their tax liability, and we've done so. But in doing so, there still seems to be a misunderstanding about their self-incrimination under the constitutional amendment. They don't want to self-incriminate themselves. However, once you're in the business, it is not the number of transactions that's going to cause the criminal activity from a federal perspective. Just being in the business and selling it, you're in violation of federal law. So keeping books and records is still a good idea, and it's almost impossible to operate without these books and records to determine if you're making a profit or not, and what you should sell the product to, how to market to your customers, how to identify the needs of your customers, your inventory, your growth, and so many other factors that most businesses need, and requires them to keep some level of records. I don't want you to walk away believing that you don't have to provide those records, but believe that providing those records to the department is going to somehow self-incriminate yourself or somehow cause you a federal exposure to the federal law. It's not. That ship has already sailed when you applied for the nonprofit. You're already on the radar of the federal government. So the volume of the sales is not going to make a difference. And I only share that if you have information to dispute the findings of the department, I would encourage you to provide that data.
We, as far as the books and records, that's what I'm really concerned about from the beginning, because we've produced all of that. The contribution logs are our sales logs. The only expenses for this corporation, there's $100 that goes out for whatever member decides to grow at their house for that cycle, gets $100 a month towards the electricity bill, and there's a $50 a month cell phone allowance. Besides those two expenses, only other expenses are fertilizer, dirt, fresh water, things to actually grow the produce. When we went through
You indicated that the taxpayer filed its own personal tax returns
Correct.
based on income from other sources other than,
Yes.
were those tax returns provided to the department?
No.
Did he take a depreciation for the vehicle used on his personal income tax returns?
No.
Any deductions related to the business on his personal income tax returns?
Nothing.
Did he file, this is a nonprofit, did he file the appropriate documents to reflect
He did not get federal nonprofit status.
on the state income tax returns?
Right, so that forces you in to become a normal corporation. So the California and federal, he was just filed as a normal corporation.
When he filed his state corporate tax returns,
Yes.
was there any, did you provide a copy of that to the department?
Yes.
Department seen the state corporate income tax returns?
We have seen the federal income tax returns for the years 2011 and 2012. They do take a deduction for automobile and truck expenses for both years. That's the information that,
They depreciate the truck?
all I have, I don't know. All I
On the
have,
expense, on the form, typically they're asked to indicate the number of miles, beginning mileage, ending mileage, and so forth. Was that information available?
Mr. Horton, we don't have a copy or a transcript of the income tax return. The auditor just transcribed some of the information from that federal income tax return to their work paper.
Maybe if you could provide the personal income tax returns, it's completely optional. This is a corporation. I'm not saying that,
Right, but the only expenses, none of the auto, no depreciation. Again, each year there's $1,200 in electricity taken, because
Maybe-
$100 a month, $600 for a cell phone, and the rest are the supplies.
maybe,
Go ahead.
maybe you can position the department to do what they refer to as a cost of living analysis to kind of determine if the sales amount is reasonable for his level of living. If the personal income tax or whatever income he has is brought to bear, and all of those calculations may take place. But, I'm grasping at straws, but I would concur that with my colleagues that the numbers that the department has come up with, if we talk about a ballpark analogy, it seems as if though they just got to first base. And so it seems rather reasonable in their calculation. And why I wanted to encourage you that you're not violating any law, you're not exposing yourself, you're not incriminating yourself by providing books and records aside from these agreements even if you were to provide the agreements, I would certainly encourage you to consult with an attorney, but I don't see any reason why those records shouldn't be there, and some type of actual sales journal or something to support your position. If you were going to sell the business, what would you produce to the seller?
It's not a business for sale, it's a nonprofit. The members,
If you were going to sell the business.
it's never even thought about that. He's never asked me for analysis of it. I mean, it does $12,000 a year in sales. You know, I do books and taxes for other people. It's not worth anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Harkey.
Hi, thank you. This is for the petitioner. You say that you make one sale per quarter to each member. Is that the way you conduct your business?
It takes about 3 months to produce the product. So during each, while they're producing, they're getting members to contribute money at that time. So
Okay, and members purchase the product or use the product. How often do they use the product? Or come to you to receive the product?
there's one grow every 3 months. So as they contribute the money, the dates are on the contribution logs, and then at the end of the 3 months when it's done, however much is left there is then divided up kind of by the members' needs and the percentage that they contributed of the overall contributions for that quarter.
Do you store any of it?
They're very rarely, I mean, it's only 3
Okay,
to
the
350 grams a quarter. It's usually going out to all the members.
The reason I'm asking, because I thought I had heard that you said that they kind of pick up once per quarter, is that on the top posts for weed maps, there's Hani Baba, FXT 187, and Bidawig 1, and they are all purchasing multiple times, more than once per quarter. And so that's another indication that perhaps it's a marijuana delivery service, because these are repeats. These are the big repeats. There were 185 users out of 315 reviews, but these three individuals, one purchased 34 times, one purchased 10, one purchased 8, different years, 34 from 2011 to 2014, which is more than once per quarter, and the others. And then one gentleman just purchased 10 times in 1 year, or gentleman or woman, I don't know, and the other purchased several times. There's also on your, and I believe somebody was probably, one of the other members probably looking at this, but on Just For You Caregivers website's got the phone number and the email, and it's got getting started, complete the new membership form, and then it says fill out the app and sign, and then you can begin, and minimum delivery amount is 1/8 or $45 in edibles, pre-rolls, or concentrates to Moreno Valley, Riverside, and immediate surrounding areas. Other surrounding areas may be subject to a $10 delivery charge. So you do have a minimum delivery, and it doesn't indicate that they're taking all in one grow. So I'm as I look through this, our analysis indicated that the owner had other businesses that you reported taxes on. Is that correct?
Yeah, other forms of income, not other businesses.
Other forms of income. What were the other forms of income, if you don't mind?
He's a gambler, plays poker.
Okay, and so that's not detailed anywhere, but that's where the income?
Yeah.
Okay. We also, when we Googled, or when we did the website, we found that there was another business, a breeding company, operating out of that home. Is there a pit bull breeding company?
No, ma'am.
Okay, there's something at that address. You might want to check that out, because it's not paying sales
That was
taxes
a
either.
previous tenant that was living in the home.
Okay, so if there's a,
Joe something, or,
yeah, you just might want to be sure that the permit, that the breeding company is no longer registered in your home, because it looks like it needs to be registered with the board as well.
yeah, no, that was a tenant that was there probably 3 years ago or so.
Okay, I just want to be sure you're protecting yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, uh-huh. Okay, without books or records, it's a tough deal. We can't, I think the estimates have to be the estimates, especially when you look at the reviews and the other entity being located so closely. So I'm not finding a way to make any concessions at this time. And I agree with Member Horton. I think it's really important that you keep records. I mean, you will probably have more problems from tax evasion generally than you would if you kept records, books and records. And I think it's real important that you keep books and records for your tax purposes on the federal level and the tax purposes here in California, because what you don't want to do is get wrapped into any kind of income tax evasion, which without books and records, you're kind of at everybody's mercy. And we don't know where this is all going. We know California is legitimizing the business and probably will even legitimize recreational use, and so that's going to be a major endeavor for us to establish some kind of procedure for it, and for also everyone involved in it to keep proper books and records, because if the federal government ever does want to have an issue, you at least better have your bases covered that way. We just don't know. I'm thinking nobody's going to, probably we're not going to get disturbed that way, but you don't know. You don't know what the next administration will do. So that's that. I'm finished.
They,
Mr. Kane?
Yeah, I'm a little, you guys, we keep talking about these books and records, and they were produced to the board. The original auditor came in and asked me for the list of receipts and what the expenses were. I told him
Okay, I guess I'm not clear. I don't believe that you just do co-op. I believe you are legitimately delivering. And I think that the weed maps that you have to pay a monthly fee for and you update, and also all of the reviews indicate that it's a little bit more of a business than just providing for co-op members. Because Weed Maps does have delivery service and listings and how you must abide, and there is a monthly fee, nominal monthly fee to be on the site, so you're obviously doing some kind of business and you're paying a fee or you wouldn't be on the Weed Maps site. So I think that's one more expense you might want to add to the list of your client. So I find for the department, I don't see that there's any other way around it at this point. So I'd like to make a motion to support staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Harkey makes a motion to support staff recommendation, seconded by Mr. Horton. Without objection, motion carries.